Hi, Becca. Hi, Becca. So I'm going to give you some feedback as I'm looking over your lesson plans here. And this voice feedback is going to be a lot longer than what I would typically do because this is the first time you've lesson planned for me or for English Ed. I'm going to just go line by line through things and talk you through my thought process so that you can see areas where I like what you're doing and you can continue to replicate that in future lesson plans, and then also areas where I want some changes, and I'll explain to you why and what I'm thinking, so that way you can learn and develop as we go through this whole crazy beast that is lesson planning. All right. So your top section here is well done, and so I have no. It's well done, filled out. There you go. So in your desired results section, you clearly chose an evidence outcome that aligns to the purpose for what it is that you're doing. In this part right here. Okay. And then your essential questions for global. I like very much the definition of home. I see now that yours is the prompt that we use in class. And so I like that because that's a concept that all people can relate to. It stretches across literature and time, so that's why I would call that a good global question. And then your content area question is also well written. It's specific to the piece of text, it's specific to a skill. Okay, so those are well done. And then what I look for, and your students will understand and your students will be able to, is a similar skill or a similar piece of information so that you would have students thinking about and working on the same concept during a class. And so those are well aligned. Okay. All right. So looking in your in your assessment section, your formative assessment, right, that's the kind of thing that's going to inform your instruction so you know if kids are getting it. And so having a discussion that you're listening to is a nice choice for that. And then, of course, for this one, obviously, the summative assessment is the final essay. Okay, so well done there. All right. All right, the learning plan is where I'm going to spend the most time looking because this is the meat of what you're doing, why you're doing, what kind of a teacher you want to be, how you want it to sound, things like that. I'm glad to see that you are thinking about students' needs over here in differentiation, so that's good. When you say here that you want to review ideas or themes of home presented in the bean tree, what I'd like to see is a sub bullet here, right after, regarding their essay topic, for you to have a couple ideas or key ideas or themes generated that you want to make sure that the students have included. One thing that's hard when we're teaching is that we're trying to remember all the things that we want to make sure the students get in there while we're listening to their ideas and considering, oh, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought about it. Oh, that's an idea that I think I'd like to rephrase so they get this key idea. It's a lot going on in our head. And so having a list of themes or topics right here for things that you want to have included is a good job. All right. And you did that. And you did that right here. So nicely done. Okay. All right. Then you have, I can see that you've differentiated the pieces right here that you want, that you'll be speaking, and I appreciate that. I want you to continue doing that. So you'd give the students the prompt for the essay. Hold on, let me scroll down some. And then here you move into reviewing some basic structures for a thesis, all right? What I'd like to see here is your ideal answer for a thesis. So I'm going to continue scrolling and see if I can see that ideal answer, all right? Okay, so again here, what I'm going to look for, what I want you to do in your revision is to have an ideal thesis statement written. Or, if you want to push it a step further, have a crummy thesis statement written and something that is very opinion based, and then have a set of questions designed to walk the kids through the thought process of getting that from an opinion into an arguable claim. Okay, So let's get that piece worked in there. But on the flip side, I'm really glad to see that you understand the difference between an opinion and a thesis statement. And I'm glad to see that you have that in there, because that demonstrates to me that you understand, some of the potential pitfalls that your students will be facing, such that they want to just write opinions instead of arguable claims. And so I'm really glad to see that coming through in your lesson planning. All right. Okay, so moving on to the idea of a working thesis. Pardon me, let me back up just one sec. So you say use example students gave in class to demonstrate effective and arguable thesis, all right? Then give them time to stop right there, like right at the end of here, and write a few potential thesis statements that that they can work with, depending on, their thought processes that they generated up top when you said, what does home mean? So give some in-class work time right around here so that they can write those potential thesis statements, and so that you can do this thing here, pull students aside for more direct guidance, okay? Have them do that idea generation before you have them grab quotes. Because if they go in and grab quotes, they're not going to know why they're getting those, what their purpose is, what they're supporting. So gathering data to support an argument has to come after you at least have a working idea of what the argument is, okay? But I'm glad to see that you do have gathering text evidence from there, from the text inside of this lesson plan, all right? What I want to see when you say gather quotes you can use as evidence or support for your claims according to your current working thesis, you need to have 3 to 5 quotes per main idea. All right, that is a direction to the students as opposed to instruction for the students. What you want to do is some modeling here, demonstrating the thought process that we go through when we're deciding on which quote to use. I can see, so my working thesis statement is blah, blah, blah. And then I can see that the author wrote this idea here and this idea here, and then a character said this idea over here. So I'm going to need to decide which one of these is the strongest that I want to include in my paper. So you do a think aloud and you walk your students through the process of the criteria of choosing the best kind of quote, okay? And so maybe you've got it listed out in separate steps. The first thing you do is think about, if your working thesis is blah, 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 the first thing you want to do is think about, is there a character in the novel that really exhibits that blah, blah, blah? Or is there a moment in the plot that really exhibits that blah, blah, blah? Then you want to open your book and go find and follow that character until you see that character perform an action or say something that supports blah, blah, blah. Or you want to go to that place in the plot, if it was the climax, and we're right in the middle of the book, for instance, and look around that area for a quote that supports blah, blah, blah. So do you see how I'm walking the students through giving them instructions to be successful on this instead of just telling them, open the book and find some quotes? Becca, this one's going to be a real struggle for you because you strike me as a very strong student, probably very well thought through, probably very hardworking. And so your teachers through the years, I'm assuming, have been able to say things to you like, Becca, go find some quotes to support that. And your brain does whatever it does and you go find them. You want to remember that you're going to have a number of students in your class that are intimidated by texts, that are intimidated by the writing process, and so they really struggle. And giving those students those very broken down step-by-step instructions is going to be a real place of comfort for them and help them to understand that you want to help them develop their skills. So that's some of the reason I'm going after some of these pieces, asking you to put some steps in there. Okay, let's move on to your next lesson plan in the sequence. Before I move on to your next lesson plan, sorry, I did want to talk about your literature essay do's and don'ts of thesis writing, and then the literature essay thesis guidelines. So these are really valuable documents. I like these documents a lot. I think they're good handouts for students. I think they can also be overwhelming as handouts for students. And I didn't really see you addressing necessarily in your Literature Essay Part 1, Planning Lesson Plan, I didn't see you addressing your use of these necessarily, so I didn't know if these were going to be something you want the students to take notes on, if these are going to be things you just read to them, how it is that you plan to incorporate these. They're well done, so then write to me in your lesson plans how it is you plan to incorporate those, okay? Okay, so in your second lesson plan here, I see that you have, how to properly insert quotes, using a colon to introduce them and editing their work so that it's MLA formatted, all right? And then here, I've got a bit of a divide right here, and that's a little worrisome. So you have students will understand how textual evidence can enhance a student's claim, and then over here you have proper MLA formatting and to pull quotes from the novel and connect them to relevant points. So this one here and this one here support each other, yet in your lesson plan, because I've looked at it, all you're doing is MLA formatting. So this, if you were in step 363 and I came to formally observe you on this, one of the things that I would be concerned about is that you did not address this evidence outcome right here. Students are not going to understand how textual evidence can enhance a claim or an argument. Let's get into the learning plan and I'll show you what I'm seeing, okay? So I see your formative assessment here that you want them to create a detailed plan for their essay organized by main ideas and quotes from the text. All right. So here, share your favorite quote, explain why they chose that quote and what the main idea they plan to support using that quote. Okay. So I hear that and I hear this right here, calling them to shared examples, and then this. If confusion ensues, return to direct instruction on how quotes support claims. I didn't really see that direct instruction, and I did pause my recording and look back into your previous documents to make sure I didn't miss it, but there has been no direct instruction on how quotes support claims. And here again, I think this is that thing you're going to struggle with because you're a good student and you understand it. And I know we would all like to think that a sophomore in high school would understand this, but I'm not I'm not so sure that they would. Right? So you may need to adjust these lesson plans and add that kind of direct instruction in. All right? I'm really glad to see in this lesson plan that you did not shy away from MLA formatting. It's not a sexy, flashy lesson plan at all, and yet it's so important. And I'm glad to see you talking about how you're going to say that, how you're going to show that, the important pieces in there. And I'm glad to see that you're not shying away from that really important instruction. Okay. You walk them through the works cited page, and that's really well done too. So you have the students practice the punctuation on their own in their notes, walk around and check for understanding. Then the rest of class is dedicated to work time, but this is the place where it's your formative assessment. You need to know whether your students are actually doing a good job at using quotes or are they just dropping random quotes in there. And I'm sure you know what I mean. So you'll have to decide if there's just a whole nother lesson plan in there about the proper choice of quotes, or if that becomes part of lesson plan 1 or how that's going to look, okay? Okay, so here's your final lesson plan, and you've got the students in with their full drafts and they're working on revision. You clearly have, the revising and editing one in here. You do have this evidence outcome in here using various types of phrases and clauses to convey specific meanings and add variety. And while this is a fluency one, and I do see you, later on in the learning plan asking them to look at fluency, there really isn't any instruction surrounding fluency. So again, if I was observing you teach this lesson plan, I would have some concerns about this. Simply telling the students to do this is different than instructing them how to do that. It's the kind of thing where you'll need to decide, when you revise your lesson plans, to either beef up this lesson plan, or maybe even have two separate lesson plans, one that's for revision of fluency and one that's for editing. Okay, I'll show you my places, the places in your lesson plan where I have concerns. Okay, here again I've got a bit of a misalignment right here. Students will understand it's okay to adjust their thesis as long as they have evidence to support it, and yet I did not see any conversation regarding that in your learning plan. And here you have edit and adjust their writing based on feedback. So sort of aligned, but this one's really specific to thesis and this one's much more general. All right. Okay, so your formative and summative assessments are well done. I like the fact that you're thinking about the organization and the movement in the classroom here. And then you say, here's how the editing process is going to work, okay? So you have them spending 10 minutes on each round. And what that demonstrates to students is that each round is equally important. So that means that the fluency of an essay, I'm going to spend 10 minutes looking at that, and that is just as important as spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Now, that may be your intention, but I'm not quite sure if it is. So you'll need to think carefully about that. Maybe, and here's the unfortunate thing. When we ask kids to revise, they end up giving themselves new editing problems because they're rethinking. That's why revision should precede editing, okay? So you have them highlight the thesis and main ideas, and then if there's a misconception or a drift off of topic, make note of it and continue to work on the thesis. I don't know that kids are going to be good enough readers of their peers' writing in order to accurately do this for them. It's going to be something you need to provide some more direct instruction in and even some modeling in, all right? This piece right here, wait, did I miss the editing piece? Sorry, let me scroll a bit. Yeah, right here, okay? You have watch out for typos, basic grammar, and punctuation, okay? It's a good opportunity for you to review. Let's make sure that you have your notes out on the proper punctuation for MLA. And that's not a bad idea. You say basic grammar, those kids are going to hear blah, blah, blah. You need to be a little bit more specific in this regard, and I don't know, provide a little bit of instruction or modeling, okay? I really like that you have this sentence. When students read out loud to themselves, they are more likely than not to catch a lot of their grammar errors, and so I'm glad that you have that. But then you follow it up with this really abstract sentence. Check to make sure that each sentence makes sense next to one another. Do their ideas flow and make sense, or is it choppy? Those are a bunch of content-specific English teacher words that you will need to direct, instruct, and model for the students. Chapter 5 out of the Martha Cohn text can help you out with that if you want, or you can look at that, doing that on your own. I also really like the fact that when they get their papers back that you tell them ideally this, essentially this is your paper and you can do with it what you feel best, okay? So, Becca, overall, lots of things I see that I like in here. Definitely a few pieces I want changed. And to come full circle, this is a longer voice feedback than I would normally give someone, and I don't do this to overwhelm you. I do this because this will, this YouTube video will sit up there for the entire semester, and you can come back to it when you want to get some reminders. You can listen to this in portions, just listen to the first part, just listen to the second part, whatever it is that you need to do. But I wanted to really crack my head open as I'm looking at these and share some of those thoughts with you so that you can continue to be successful. Really good job, though. Thank you.